Chapter 3, Star Trap. I sat on the broken glass staring at the gun. The distinctive smell of gunpowder lingered in the van. Amber, are you all right? I didn't know how to answer that, still in shock and trying to process everything. The image of the man's terrified face right before I'd pulled the trigger floated in my mind. His eyebrows slightly raised, the corners of his mouth pointed downward. It was as if he had known death was coming. The rest of the drive was silent until Mike could find a safe place to pull over. He parked in front of a secluded, swampy lake, not a single person in sight. I was sure there would be questions from others with the van's impairment. It looked like it got into a fight with 5 enormous bears and lost. Mike hopped out of the driver's side and opened up the back. My eyes didn't leave the gun. He slowly pulled it out of my hands and set it out of sight. I slid to the edge and put my feet on the ground, but suddenly my legs became stiff and I couldn't stand up. A wave of nausea hit me and my heart twisted. The vision of the man staring at me seconds before his life ended was haunting, and I felt layers of unsettling emotions stuck between sadness, fear, upset, and anger. I wanted to cry, but held back the waterworks. Mike sat down beside me and placed his left hand on top of mine. The only sounds were the birds chirping and a nearby egret croaking. No words were being exchanged, not even in thought. I honored his patience and comforting presence to keep my mess of emotions in check. Finally, I was able to find the words. I killed a man. Saying this out loud made the nausea intensify. I wanted to be sick, just to make this feeling disappear, but I knew it wasn't going to change what had happened. What was done was done. Mike reached his arms out to console me. I wrapped my arms around him and he flinched. "Ouch," he cried. "Oh, Mike, your arm," I shouted as I stood up. Suddenly my legs unfroze and the thought of me ending someone's life just shifted to concern about the blood covering Mike's shirt. The pain he felt began to burn in my arm. I'd been an empath most of my life, and since we merged our powers last year, we felt each other's physical and emotional pain. While I was emotional from killing someone, it must have briefly clouded the pain in the arm. My first instinct was to heal him. I removed my tied sweatshirt from his arm and rolled up his sleeve. Blood dripped from the hole. I placed my hand over his wound to begin the healing process, but he stopped me. "No, wait," he snapped. "The bullet is still inside." The backside had no exit wound. He was right. If I tried to heal it, the bullet would be stuck inside the muscle. "We can't go to the hospital," Mike said. "You're going to have to remove it." This day just keeps getting better. First, I was a killer, now a surgeon. But his time was limited, and I had to try something. I was going to have to dislodge the bullet using my telekinetic abilities. I was hesitant since I'd never done this before. Mike took off his belt, placed it between his teeth, and bit down. "This is going to hurt," I said. I began the process by hovering both hands over his arm and concentrating on his wound. The heat in my eyes burned and my body tingled as I generated the energy I needed. The energy surrounded the bullet and it slowly slid toward me. Mike squinted in discomfort and his teeth bit the belt harder. He bellowed in agony as the bullet dislodged. 10 seconds later, it landed in my outstretched hand. I could feel his pain as it slowly subsided to a small stinging. He removed the belt from his mouth and opened his left hand. I placed the red-covered bullet in his palm. Mike studied it as he held it up. "I'm keeping this," he chuckled, a reminder of our first battle victory. That was what I loved about this man. He could take the worst situation and somehow recognize the positive side of it. Okay, just hold still so I could finish." Placed my left hand back over the hole and my right hand into his right hand for comfort. Mike laid his left hand over the top of my hand and gazed deeply into my eyes. We shared our energy to begin the healing process. His brown eyes glistened like crystals of ice, and I could feel the warmth in mine. I concentrated, using what energy was left in my body. I felt it flowing through my arms and legs. Hot and cold tingled in my veins. Energy moved through his body to assist the healing. Now my eyes filled with cold energy, making them sparkle like crystals of ice in his glowing flames of fire. And the bright orange and blue emerged from our hands and surrounded his wound. During this process, I felt slightly lightheaded, draining what energy I had left to give. Mike appeared to be on the brink of collapsing, but just before that happened, the bloody hole gradually closed shut. Once the lesion sealed, we removed our hands and our eyes returned to normal. The energy we'd used was more than we'd expected. Usually we just heal cuts or minor headaches. Something this intense could be extremely overwhelming for our bodies to handle. Felt like I'd run a marathon and every part of my body just wanted to fall to the ground. Mike reached for his bag, pulled out an old water bottle, and handed it to me. As the water slid down my throat, my heart rate returned to normal, and my exhausted body no longer felt like collapsing. Energy restored, I handed him the bottle, and he finished what little remained. My arms wrapped around him with much love. Now what? Should we call the police? I asked. No, we can't call the police, Mike huffed. For all we know, we exposed our powers way too much, and they could have picked it up on any video surveillance. We don't even know who these people were. The police could be a part of this. I don't trust anyone but you at this point. He had one thing right. We couldn't trust anyone. And if the government was behind this, I didn't want to become a science project in some lab hooked up to a bunch of machines. We weren't aliens and deserved to be treated like anyone else. We may have had special abilities given to us by higher power, but never did we want to cause trouble or have we used those powers to gain anything. Our lives have been pretty normal, no laws broken, up until the attack. Not a clue who these men are, I said. What we do know is they have false assumptions that I'm pregnant. Let's go back to the hotel and figure this out, Mike insisted. That's a good idea, I agreed. But first, we need to get rid of the van. Staring in dismay at what had been a beautiful new red van, I shook my head at the bullet holes and shattered windows, memories I want to forget. I don't think our warranty is good for bullet hole repairs, I laughed, to think we still had payments owed. Let's ditch this in the swamp, Mike said with a grave smile. We can always call and report that it was stolen at a later time. I wasn't so sure about this idea, but it was all we had for now. We drove the vehicle out to the swamp in the middle of nowhere, put it neutral, and let it sink into the water until the entire van submerged. Mike put on his jacket to conceal the blood on his shirt, even though it was 90 degrees outside. He called for an Uber to take us to a rental place where we could get a vehicle. Because of the race, we rented the last car they had, a gray 2010 Ford Taurus. As Mike drove back to the hotel, I gazed out the window, feeling the sun on my head. I rubbed my hollow golden dove necklace that rested on my chest. This was the last thing my grandmother had given me when I was 15. She passed a week later. Mike messed with the air conditioner knob since it seemed to be going in and out. My mind replayed the man staring into my eyes and me pulling the trigger. Stupid air conditioner, work, Mike shouted. Mike slammed his hand on the dash and suddenly, bang, I heard a shot go off. I jumped. My eyes squeezed shut and a piercing light filled my vision. Suddenly I was no longer 24. I was taken back to age 7, the day a similar sound happened. This was the day my abilities exposed themselves for the first time, the day of my awakening. It had been a hot, sunny day in the late afternoon. I'd been at a playground back in my hometown, Middleton, Pennsylvania. 2 of my friends and I had been swinging on the swing set. We lived in a gated trailer park where kids could play safely without the parents needing to be watching us 24/7. At least that's what we thought until this day. Across the way had been some older kids causing trouble. 3 larger boys had shoved a smaller boy down to the ground. One of the 3 boys had begun to kick the smaller boy in his right ribs as the boy screamed for them to stop. I stopped swinging because suddenly a sharp pain had hit me on my right side. As I held my right side, my friends stared at the helpless little boy. He was begging for them to stop, but they laughed and continued to bully him. Unsure what to do since these boys had to be 5 years older than me, bigger and stronger. I had felt my heart racing as I watched in fear of this young boy getting physically hurt. Something was happening to me. The shooting pain on my right side grew worse. My eyes felt warmth flowing through them. Every kick the boy felt, I'd felt. What is happening to me? My friends had been unaware that I was in pain, because they couldn't keep their eyes off the boy. It's hurting. Make it stop. I had been so scared and fear set in. I'd had to do something. Now my eyes had felt like they were on fire, and the first thing that had come to my mind was to throw both of my hands into the air and yell, "Stop!" I shouted at the top of my lungs. Suddenly, pop, pop, two loud bangs had gone off simultaneously like gunshots. Across the playground had been an unlit light post. The light had exploded as if something had gone straight through the bulbs. Everyone had ducked down, assuming someone was shooting a gun. The pain in my side had stopped, the fire in my eyes now gone, and everyone was scattering, terrified by the loud pops that had sounded as if we'd been shot at. Oh no, what did I do? I'd run home so quickly, slammed my bedroom door, and jumped into my bed. I curled up into a ball under the covers with my eyes squeezed shut, praying no one had known it was me. I carefully opened my eyes to see the sun beaming. My pulse raced and the sweat slid down my face, but I was no longer in my bed. My memory disappeared. This wasn't the first time my mind had taken me back. I was a visionary, and usually my visions came during sleep when my subconscious was in control, but lately they had become more frequent and could trigger at any time. No way to control them or shut them off. He glanced at me while reaching out for my hand. Mike had seen the memory trigger. His comforting touch slowed my heart down. I cracked the window for some fresh air. That memory was the first time I'd exposed my telekinetic powers with my eyes glowing. Since none of the kids had seen the white energy released from my hands, I knew that no one but us could see it. Also, this experience had been the first time I discovered what it truly felt like to be an empath. I could feel others' emotions and physical pain. I didn't know it at the time, but that was my awakening to become an indigo child. Growing up as a star child wasn't easy. It took years of self-control and self-discipline. I felt alone at times. Luckily, Mike and I had found each other, but the big question that haunts me was, how were we the only ones? I sighed while resting my head on the seat and returned my focus to the sky. If only I could go back to the day at the playground, to walk away and not save the boy from being beaten. Maybe my gifts would have never awakened, to push them deep down into darkness. Hey, Mike gently squeezed my hand and gave me a gentle smile. It's going to be okay. Remember, your memories aren't your destiny. I love you. I wasn't so sure he was right this time. Why'd I have a gut feeling these memories and dreams were preparing me for the destiny to come? I love you too. Forever love, I said. Forever love.